Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Kristin Schumacher. I'm with the California Budget and Policy Center. For those of you that aren't familiar, the Budget Center is a nonprofit in Sacramento that engages in fiscal and policy research with the goal of improving the lives of low and middle income Californians. So this budget agreement that was officially final just last week is absolutely a historic budget. It includes $196 billion in general fund spending, which is $30 billion higher than general fund spending in last year's state budget. And that doesn't include special funds or federal fund spending within our budget as well. We also are putting away $25 billion in reserves. That's the highest level in California history. This budget package is really large and complex this year, and we're still waiting on administrative documents. So figures that you're going to see in the next few slides are rounded, and they should be considered preliminary as we wait for some final administrative budget documents to be released in the coming weeks. So the 21-22 budget agreement, that's the state fiscal year that started on July 1, utilizes the significant amount of one-time federal COVID relief funds that were meant to stabilize childcare providers. It's also meant to support families. And then this budget agreement also invests in an expansion of services. This slide lays out some of these investments. You know, it's a big year when I have to kind of mess with font sizes and line spacing to make all the investments fit on one slide. That rarely happens for childcare, so that's good news. I think it's also really important to mention that this budget is also the first to reflect the bargaining agreements between the administration and the childcare providers united union. This was instrumental in boosting supports for subsidized childcare providers in California. So first, the budget agreement invests $780 million to increase or supplement payment rates for childcare providers. The agreement does this in a number of ways. First, it shifts us to a single rate system. As you probably all know, we have two systems, payment systems in California. We're going to shift to one based on the regional market rate survey, which is done periodically every few years. This is going to increase payment rates for providers, and then there's also some provisions in the budget agreement to address some inequities that may result by merging into this one payment rate system. The budget agreement also is going to provide some rate supplements over a 2-year period, specifically for licensed family childcare providers. The agreement also includes $500 million for stipends for subsidized childcare providers, as well as a flat stipend for all licensed providers in our states. So not just those offering subsidized care, but all licensed. And that flat rate stipend is actually based on licensing capacity. Finally, the budget agreement supports the field by providing $250 million for childcare facilities. Congrats to everyone on this call for that big win. In addition, there's also $130 million for many different items, such as provider training and capacity building initiatives, just to name a few. For families struggling to afford care, the budget agreement roughly doubles the number of subsidized childcare spaces this fiscal year, and that's non-entitlement childcare spaces. So not counting CalWorks childcare, which is entitlement, but non-entitlement childcare spaces like our AP program or our general childcare programs. Those spaces will roughly double this year. There's also funding to continue to support spaces for essential workers' children from this past year. And then there's also funding to continue to waive family fees through the fiscal year. So through June 30th, 2022, June 30th of next year. Now, before I move to preschool and transitional kindergarten, I think it's really important to mention that state leaders used those federal COVID relief funds to fund many of these line items in our budget. However, these are ongoing expenses. So in future years, we will need state leaders to invest ongoing general fund spending to maintain rates and services for families in our state. So in addition to childcare, the budget agreement also expands the state's existing transitional kindergarten program to all 4-year-olds in the state. This expansion includes 1-year planning, followed by a phase-in period, where when fully implemented in the 25-26 school year, all 4-year-olds in California will be eligible for transitional kindergarten. The estimated cost at full implementation is $2.7 billion. $2.7 billion will be moved from the general fund portion of our budget to Prop 98, which is funding dedicated to schools and community colleges. This is referred to as rebenching, and it will permanently increase funding for schools and community colleges, but in the future, it will also restrict general fund spending by that amount as well. In addition to the additional cost of expanding this grade, TK, the budget also funds nearly $500 million for preschool TK and kinder facilities grant program, as well as $200 million for planning and implementation grants for LEAs, and then also $100 million for teacher recruitment and training. So the state has gone all in on expanding transitional kindergarten in California. The budget agreement also starts to address some of the quality concerns in our current TK program, such as adding qualified staff members to classrooms and then cutting the ratios from students to teachers in half. Finally, the budget agreement also provides funding for new spaces in our LEA-based preschool programs. It increases rates for preschool providers specifically. So preschool providers will also see a raise, not just childcare providers, which is important. And then it's going to provide new funding for an existing grant program called the Special Education Early Intervention Preschool Grant Program, which is great news. There was a lot of demand for those dollars when the program was created a number of years ago. That was a very high level, very quick overview of my preliminary budget numbers. My contact information is here. I'll pass along this deck to Erica if she wants to distribute as she sees fit. And I can take questions too if there are any.